Hi everyone, my name's Jodie Bracu and I'm going to be giving you a short introduction to the circular economy. I'm really happy to have been invited by ACTA to give you guys this intro before you go into your proper training on circular economy for textiles. I am an environmental engineer by trade, so I work in all sorts of different industries around circular economy. I'm from Australia originally and I'm coming to you from Adelaide, but I was fortunate enough to live in France for more than a decade. And at that time, circular economy was emerging as this buzzword and then all of a sudden took over policy fields, business fields, and I found myself in the middle of the circular economy revolution in Europe, which was really exciting. So today I'm going to present you a little bit of background around circular economy and a couple of examples in the textile industry, and you'll be able to go much further later with other examples. I've chosen a couple from France because they're a little bit harder to find, and I know the team from ACTA is going to be presenting lots of international best practice from Netherlands and places like that, and also Australian stuff. So circular economy in a nutshell, and I might just get rid of my little image now. It'll make me very small. Maybe I'll put me in a nutshell. Circular economy in a nutshell. What I like to, when I whittle it completely down to the most simple thing, is that circular economy is about keeping products and materials at their highest value and doing it by design. So the two things I always harp on about are value and design. What this means in terms of highest value, what are we talking about with value? Well, it's both monetary value and environmental value. So the company that I work for, Life Cycles, we do a lot of life cycle assessment. So we have a look at what is the environmental footprint of products or systems. So for example, when I buy this t-shirt in the shop, how much carbon has already been used up in manufacturing that t-shirt, how much water, etc. And then we model how much is used up in the rest of its lifetime and as it is managed as waste, etc. So we know that as we transform things from raw materials into components and fibers, and then we bring it together and eventually we create a product, we're adding all sorts of different value to that product, brand value as well. We're transforming it from a simple textile into a beautiful piece of clothing or a beautiful piece of furnishing, for example, that can be sold for a certain price in a shop. And then people use it for a certain time. And the amazing thing is it's so quick to destroy all that value by putting it in the bin. So how could we retain that value for longer at the end of the product life? The first strategy is to actually extend that life as much as we can. If we can keep things working and in use for longer, they're creating more value, especially for the person that has them. And then as they're coming towards the end of the life, we can look at repairing them. We can look at refurbishing them or reselling them to other consumers that might want them. We can look at remanufacturing things. So that's when you're taking back components of a product and making them into an as new product. And then finally, at the end, we can look at recycling. So there's a lot of different things we can do with a textile product to try to create as much value or retain as much value in it. But it works much better if you do this by design. So at the moment in Australia, for example, we're trying to do a lot of textile recycling and create value through textiles, but we're seeing that products aren't made to be repaired, they aren't made to be refurbished, and they certainly aren't made to be recycled. So in a positive sense, you can design both the product and the system surrounding the product. You can design for longevity, you can design for modularity, you can design for recycling, you can design so different elements last longer, you can design so things can be replaced and repaired more easily. So that's that positive sort of design for X strategy. But then there's the designing out things that don't make sense in our system. So when we see waste, we do our best to design it out from get-go. And a really important element, especially in textiles, is designing out anything that might perturb future cycling of that product. So chemicals of concern, for example, that might find their way into our clothing, we certainly don't want to be recycling them again and again in the economy. Another example might be mixing fabric. So if you had a pure fabric, you could recycle it much easier than if you create hybrids and things like that. So we're designing for these systems to work and we're designing out anything that might impede this system and anything that's waste. And as all businesses, you know, waste is wasted money, it's wasted environmental impact, and we can design a lot of it out from get-go. Why would we want to do this from a business perspective? Well, at a larger policy perspective, there's a lot of studies around that show how much value and economic value tends to motivate decision makers a lot more than environmental value, but not only. But there's studies that show that applying circular economy principles at scale could yield up to $4.5 trillion in economic business benefits. Now that's worldwide up to 2030. That was from a study from the World Economic Forum back in about 2015. And that really shifted things in terms of governments around the world and businesses going, actually, this is an opportunity. This is not just about being less bad. It's been shown recently that it could generate more than $1,860 billion in economic benefits in Australia and avoid a whole lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's from a report by PwC. There's reports, studies in China and Europe, also in India from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, often working hand in hand with McKinsey, that show quite amazing benefits in monetary sense and in greenhouse gas sense. There's also a number of studies that show the potential employment benefits of circular economy as well. And the group from ACTA will show you more studies that are specific for the textiles area in this way as well. Just a little bit of a tour of some of the policy things that are happening. I really like this picture top left, hopefully for you. In 2008, the two biggest global economies, China and European Union, actually signed a MOU on circular economy. So each of these economies already had their own policies, action plans, etc., in place to transition towards a more circular economy, but realizing that their economies are so linked, they're actually looking at working together on ways to make material exchange between the countries more traceable, more understanding about products coming from China. How can we tell what's in them? How can European companies work with their Chinese counterparts, etc. So if we question here in Australia whether circular economy is relevant, I think this is a really big indicator that it certainly is. So a lot of our end markets are in Europe, so that means our customers care about this stuff. And a lot of our, it's not just end markets, but a lot of our supply chain goes back into China as well. So from both ends, business and industry is shifting. That also means that the supply chain in China that we're often working with in Australia is getting used to some of these things. They might actually be doing some really innovative stuff, especially for their clients in Europe. So Australian businesses can actually tap into that as well. Back home, New South Wales has had a circular economy policy statement in place since 2019, and they have a great organisation called New South Wales Circular. I'm on the board, so I'm not objective at all, but it's pretty exciting. This organisation is supported by the Office of the Chief Engineer, and they are looking to really scale up circular economy initiatives in Victoria. And there's a lot of projects there around textiles as well. At a federal level, we have a national waste policy in place that for the first time is really recognising beyond just recycling, really moving towards circular. There's also some really exciting stuff happening at national level with the Productivity Commission looking into right to repair and things like this. The bottom little snippet is from a study that was released in South Australia in 2017 that actually calculated the potential benefits of a circular economy in South Australia in terms of jobs and carbon dioxide emissions. And that's been a really great study in imagining, what this looks like for Australia, how this could work in our country. And Green Industry South Australia has done a lot of really exciting work in that area since and before. Bottom right-hand side is a little image from the Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre called CBIC in Victoria. CBIC is a really exciting organisation, and if any of you are in Victoria doing business with Victoria, look them up. Because they are really looking to support the transition towards a circular economy. They're run out of Sustainability Victoria, so they're a government initiative, and they are doing a lot of amazing dissemination of best practice and also financing of circular economy business models and things like that. And the most exciting part is that next year, they will be really featuring textiles as an important sector for them to focus on. So in Australia, we might have been a little bit late to the party, but it's certainly happening now that all the different states and federal governments are looking at circular economy. They're dabbling in different ways. We've got a long way to go to have full support of circular economy businesses here, but there are eager ears to hear about circular economy business models at the policy level in Australia. Now, I wanted to show you two quick examples that you might not have heard of. They're French examples. They're quite hard to get information on in English. This first image is from a company called The Relais. And this was around the corner from where I worked in France, and we worked with them on some really exciting innovation projects. So this is recycling on steroids. This is one conveyor belt. There was two massive conveyor belts in this really enormous industrial complex that they'd used. There was about 700 people working in this area, and these are just the people doing the sorting into all sorts of different areas, and they sorted through several tons of clothing every day. So these clothes came from all around France, and they were really centralized into quite an industrial complex. Now, why was that important? It meant that they could really squeeze all the value out of these beautiful clothes. So there was about a dozen different areas that these clothes were going, these different textile goods were going, from being able to be resold in the French marketplace. So it's same in Australia. The Australian consumer only wants to buy secondhand clothes if they're really good quality, good brands, no blemishes, etc. So they could pick out those kind of clothing from the top end. And then they had all these different areas that they would point those clothing to. Some of it was going to Africa. Now, I know there's been a lot of controversy lately about clothing going to Africa, and I believe this is a massive concern in Australia from the charitable sector. But here it was really great because they'd set up sister organisations in Africa. I forgot to mention, this is a social enterprise, but I've never seen a more cutthroat business in the world, because every dollar they made went towards another job to keep someone off the street. So they were really powerhouses in terms of making money, because that money was made to get people off the street and get fragile people back into labour. So they were very serious about their business model making economic sense. But so they'd set up sister companies in Africa. They managed to sort exactly the clothes that were needed in those geographies. And it was in their interest that the sister company actually benefited economically from those clothing. So it was quite a robust way to have that connection with developing nations, that it wasn't just ending up in massive landfill and becoming a problem there. They had all sorts of different types of reuse options. The day that I was there, I was blown away, because they were working with a local company, sort of the equivalent of a Jeans West, or maybe something a little bit more pricey than that, that had launched their new recycled denim range. And the lady was there with a little snippet of a certain colour denim that is the colour that this company wanted to be able to put back into their recycled jeans range. So all the jeans went to this lady, and she was able to find exactly the right colour denim and triage out that exact fibre for this company to go back. It went right down to rags, different things were cut up, buttons were taken off certain things, but everything was channeled towards the highest value. The reason we got involved with them, though, was because one problem that they had, it's the same as here, in that the quality of clothing was going down. So obviously they get the most clothing from resale. There was less good clothes coming through for resale. So the profitability was getting a little bit out of whack, but also they had so many jeans that just couldn't, and jeans were becoming more fashionable with different cuts, etc. So there were so many jeans that they just couldn't get out into the market again. So we helped them develop this insulation material. So this was linking up with the building industry. So it was sort of like, once we'd gone down through all the ranks of how these textiles could be reused within the textile industry, then we flip over into other industries as well. And so, well, actually, insulation products in buildings are really important as well. And they're an eco product as well, because they mean that buildings are better insulated, they consume less energy. So we helped them get that sorted out and worked with the building industry to train people in using it and applying it, and also doing all the safety testing to make sure it was non-flammable and things like that. So it was a really exciting business because they had that economy of scale, which meant they could create value at every point. The other important thing to consider is the systemic nature of it. So this example with the buildings shows how working with other economic sectors are important. So you're thinking about a whole system and not just a t-shirt or a pair of jeans. But also what worked really well here is that France had just implemented a extended producer responsibility scheme, which meant that anyone that put textiles onto the marketplace actually had to put a certain amount of money into a kitty that took care of the end of life of those textiles as well. So that was able to finance a lot of innovation and help finance this social enterprise as well, which had been running for about 15 years before the extended producer responsibility scheme came into place. Just like there's so many amazing charitable recyclers here in Australia that are doing wonderful things, but not quite at this level of scale, which I found really exciting. The other one I wanted to share with you, because it's all very good and well looking at the downstream end of textiles, but how about that designing for circularity as well? So this is a company called Circularity, which is a pretty high class brand. I didn't have the prices on here, but those jackets are worth about $300, so that gives you an idea of the price point. They have a lot of really interesting sustainability and circular initiatives around what materials they use, how they design their products, designing for longevity, those kind of things we were talking about before. But one aspect that I found really striking is, so this is their online website. In France, you can also access a website that's called, it says Second Histoire up in the corner there. That means second story. So basically, they have this whole narrative on their webpage about what great quality their clothes are, and they're such great quality that they want them to keep being of value. So when you buy a Circularity product, you can actually resell it on their website. So they've created like a Facebook marketplace, but just for their brand. And there's a system in that as well that they get vouchers and things to be able to spend on new products as they're selling their old. But it creates a really interesting narrative about the value of that product. And when you purchase that product, actually it's something that you can pass down if you change size, if it's just not your style anymore, that can go to someone else. So I thought that was a really interesting way of working with consumers on circular economy and really making this secondhand market valuable. And the fact that they don't see that as cannibalizing their range, they see it as being able to add to their brand story and talk about the quality of their products and give people confidence that when they're buying that product, that value doesn't just dissipate if they make the wrong choice or whatever. So that was your very, very short tour of some aspects of circular economy. And I know you're going to be learning so much more about it in the coming days. And it's really fabulous that you're taking part in this. I just want to say thank you again for inviting me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the training. And please don't hesitate to get in touch through ACTA or directly if you wish to know more. Thanks so much. Good luck.